Lilo and Stitch is the latest victim of Disney's decade-long quest to remake every single one of its classic films. Yeah, you heard me right. They've been doing this for more than 10 years. You'd think after that long they would have mastered the live-action remake formula by now, and yet, with every passing year, I can't help but feel like these live-action remakes have only become less inspired and even more blatant in their exploitation of the nostalgia audiences have for Disney's IPs. Okay, but maybe I'm being cynical. Maybe this live-action version of Lilo and Stitch will actually justify its existence. And you know, maybe it will even be an improvement over the original.
And that, kids, is what we call denial.
This movie is weird and has one massive issue that, in my opinion, severely hindered my enjoyment of it. But before we get into that, I guess I'll start by saying what this movie does well, and to be fair, there are a couple things I did enjoy. For one, I think that the actress they got for Lilo did a good job for being 6 years old. I was particularly impressed by how well she was able to act alongside a CGI character. Her reactions and interactions with Stitch were surprisingly convincing, and honestly made it easier for me to buy that Stitch was a real creature. I will say that there are a couple issues with her character, which I don't think necessarily are the actress's fault, but I'll get to that later. Another character I liked a lot was Stitch. It's great that the original voice actor got to come back for this role. I think they did a great job on translating his cartoony design to live action, and that's coming from someone who thinks a lot of Disney's live action sidekick character designs look pretty cursed. Okay, so the two title characters of this movie are decent, but that's kind of where my positives for this movie end and my major gripes with the film begin. Before I dive into my main issue with the movie, I have to acknowledge how strange this movie's pacing and editing is. What on earth happened here? The first 30 minutes of this movie in particular feel like they were edited by someone who just downed 10 cans of Red Bull after not sleeping for 3 days. There were so many jump cuts that I started to count the seconds between cuts, and I kid you not, I had a hard time counting to 3. Every 2 seconds the camera would switch to something else. It was incredibly disorienting. And it made it hard to follow what was going on, which is ridiculous because it's not like the original Lilo and Stitch is a super complicated movie. The opening scene in particular felt incredibly rushed. It almost felt like a Disney executive saw that scene and said, "Whoa, we're spending a little too much on CGI. Let's cut the length of every CGI shot in half." Like, honestly, I can't think of another explanation for why this movie's editing is so weird. And when the editing wasn't making me feel ill, the movie made sure to make me feel nauseous with its humor. I cannot for the life of me understand what Hollywood's obsession with screaming goats is. This movie makes a screaming goat joke in 2025. Disney, why? Does Bob Iger just really like 2014 humor? Was the mouse holding a gun to the director's head? How has this meme not run its course yet? I thought it was officially dead when Ralph Breaks the Internet referenced it in 2018, and if that didn't kill it, surely Thor Love and Thunder did in 2022. But no, here we are in the big 25, still seeing stuff like this! Sorry. I did not expect to get so passionate about the screaming goat thing. I would talk about the other jokes in this movie, but I don't remember a single one. I'll just say this. The humor is not good. Most jokes just boil down to one character mocking another character for saying something dumb, and it's just insufferable. But the funky editing and the lackluster humor aren't the biggest problem with this movie. No, the biggest problem with this movie is that it's a live-action movie. Now, I know some of you are probably already typing in the comments, well, duh, it's a live-action remake, what did you expect? But hear me out. I'm not just stating the obvious. I'm saying that this story in particular, possibly more than any other Disney story, suffers from the transition to live-action. I've seen my fair share of Disney remakes, but I don't think any of them made me wish I was watching the original animated version as much as this one did. I don't know if I'd go as far to say that it's the worst Disney remake, but in terms of misunderstanding what made the original great, it is definitely a contender. Because man, this story is so much worse when it's trying to fit into the constraints of live action. Take the visuals, for example. I'll give credit where credit's due. Stitch looks great. His CGI design is expressive and it's fun, but it seems like the majority of the visual effects budget went straight to him and him alone, leaving almost nothing for everyone else. Characters like Pleakley and Jumba look terrible. Their CGI looks unfinished and cheap, and I think Disney knows that because in a lot of scenes, they're just not aliens at all. They stay in their human disguises for most of the movie, even when it makes no sense for the story. There's literally a scene where they're alone, no humans in sight, and they're still in disguise. Why? Because it's cheaper, clearly. In the animated films, Jumba and Pleakley are constantly changing appearances and getting into wacky disguises. It's what makes their characters so charming. But these live-action versions don't do any of that, and it makes them so boring. By giving these characters realistic disguises, Disney has made them significantly less fun. Also, I'm sorry, this is a side note, but Jumba's new voice just doesn't work for me. And why the heck is he the main antagonist of this movie? One of the things that made the original Lilo and Stitch work so well was that it balanced emotional depth with its cartoonishness. It made difficult topics like Nani struggling to care for her younger sister after losing their parents easier to swallow. But in live action, that same plotline doesn't hit the same way. Suddenly, it's not quirky or heartwarming. It's just kind of bleak. The original movie does a great job of helping us empathize with Nani by showing us how insane and difficult Lilo can be. I mentioned before that I didn't mind the actress they got for Lilo, but no part of me bought that this little girl was as awful as the whole town acted like she was. She's just too sweet. Animation gave the character of Lilo the freedom to be as cartoony and wacky as she needed to be. And as good as this little actress is, she just doesn't compare to the animated version of Lilo. Also, the fact that Lilo is more toned down and less wild in this movie makes the plotline of a social worker investigating Nani a lot darker. Like, they try to play it for laughs, but it just isn't as funny when you're seeing a real-life person making jokes about neglecting her sister, while the house they live in is a disaster and they barely have any food in the cupboard. It just came off a lot more sad than it did in the original film. And this isn't me saying that the original didn't also deal with difficult subject matter. It definitely did. I just think that the transition to live action made it harder to empathize with Nani and her struggles with Lilo. I guess all of this begs the question, could this remake have been done better in live action? Sure. With stronger direction and more creative risk, it might have been a competent adaptation. But even then, I don't think it would have captured what made the original special. Lilo and Stitch is a story that thrives in animation. Animation is what gave these characters their charm. It's what let Lilo be so wonderfully deranged. It's the reason Pleakley and Jumba are fashion icons. And it's what allowed the entire world of the film to feel vibrant and exaggerated. The live-action remake, in contrast, feels like it's constantly working against the limitations of reality, and in the process, it loses what makes Lilo and Stitch special. So, while I understand why some people might like this movie, I think that the Lilo and Stitch live-action remake is some of the greatest proof that not every single story needs a realistic version. Sometimes, the best way to honor a great film is to just leave it alone. Or you can remake it 9 years after its release. That works too.